What if I told you one of the most valuable companies in the world makes billions? Not by selling products, but by making it almost impossible for customers to leave. Think about your own habits for a moment. If you use an iPhone, chances are you have used it for years. And if you ever thought about switching to another brand, something probably held you back. Maybe it was your photos, maybe your apps, maybe the way everything just works together. Now, here's the interesting part. Apple did not invent the smartphone. It was not the first company to make wireless earbuds. It did not even create the first smartwatch. And yet, in all of these categories, Apple dominates the profits. Not just competes, dominates. In fact, Apple makes more profit from smartphones than most of its competitors combined. And it does this while selling fewer units than the entire Android market. So the question is simple. How? How does Apple convince millions of people to pay premium prices again and again? Why do customers stay loyal, even when cheaper, or sometimes better alternatives exist? And why does switching away from Apple feel so difficult, even when logically it should not be? The answer is not just design. It is not just branding, and it is definitely not just technology. The real answer lies in Apple's business model. Because Apple does not think like a typical company that focuses on selling one product at a time. Instead, it builds an entire system where every product connects, supports, and strengthens the others. A system where the more you buy, the more valuable everything becomes. A system where convenience slowly turns into dependency. Once you enter this system, everything feels smooth. Your devices talk to each other. Your data moves effortlessly. Your experience becomes seamless. And once you get used to that, going back feels like a downgrade. That is not an accident. That is strategy. And today, we are going to break down the genius business model of Apple, step by step, so you can understand how one company turns simple devices into a powerful ecosystem, and how that ecosystem quietly became one of the most profitable machines in history. Most people think they understand why Apple is successful. They believe it is simple. Apple makes better products, so people buy them. Better design, better quality, better user experience. That sounds logical, and on the surface, it even feels true. But this explanation falls apart the moment you look closer. Because if product quality alone determined success, Apple would not be this dominant. There are smartphones with better cameras. There are laptops with more powerful hardware. There are companies offering similar features at half the price. In some cases, competitors even innovate faster. Yet Apple customers stay. Not only do they stay, they upgrade regularly. They recommend Apple to others. They build a kind of loyalty that most companies can only dream of. So clearly, something deeper is happening. The real problem is that most people are looking at Apple the wrong way. They see it as a product company. They compare an iPhone to another phone, a MacBook to another laptop, or AirPods to another pair of earbuds. But Apple is not competing product by product. It is competing system versus system. When you buy a single Apple device, it feels like a simple purchase. But over time, that single purchase starts to connect with others. You add more devices, you add services, and slowly, your entire digital life becomes part of one unified experience. Your messages sync across devices. Your photos appear everywhere. Your files move without effort. Even small things, like copying text on your phone and pasting it on your laptop, start to feel normal. Now imagine leaving that behind. Switching is no longer just about buying a different phone. It means breaking an entire system you have built. Over time, you lose convenience. You lose familiarity. You lose the smooth experience you have grown used to, and this creates friction. And people avoid friction. This is the key misunderstanding. Apple is not just selling products, it is building switching costs. And once those switching costs, stop thinking about leaving. You stop thinking about leaving. Instead, you keep upgrading within the system. So how exactly does Apple's business model work? At its core, Apple's strategy is built on three powerful layers working together: hardware, software, and services. Most companies focus on one or maybe two of these layers. Apple controls all three, and that is where the real power comes from. Let's start with hardware. Apple designs its own products, like the iPhone, MacBook, iPad, Apple Watch, and AirPods. These devices are not just built to look premium. They are designed to work perfectly with each other. Every detail is controlled, from the chips inside to the physical design, now move to software. Apple builds its own operating systems, like iOS and macOS. Because it controls both hardware and software, it can optimize performance in ways other companies cannot. This creates a smooth and consistent experience across all devices. For example, your iPhone, MacBook, and Apple Watch do not feel like separate products. They feel like parts of one system. Then comes the most underestimated layer: services. Apple offers services like iCloud, Apple Music, the App Store, and Apple Pay. These are not just they are deeply integrated into the devices. They store your data, manage your content, and handle your daily activities. Once you start using these services, they become part of your routine. Now combine all three layers. You buy an iPhone, your photos automatically sync to iCloud. You open your MacBook, and everything is already there. Your AirPods connect instantly. Your Apple Watch mirrors your notifications. Your payments are saved and ready to use. Everything works together without effort. This creates a closed ecosystem. Inside this ecosystem, Apple controls the entire experience. It decides how apps are distributed through the App Store. It earns a share from transactions. It keeps users within its environment. And this leads to two major advantages. First, customer retention. Once users are inside the system, they tend to stay for years. Second, recurring revenue. Apple does not just make money when you buy a device. It continues earning through subscriptions, services, and app purchases. So Apple is not just selling products, it is building a platform where every layer strengthens the others. Let's look at how this business model works in real life. Imagine a typical Apple user. It usually starts with a single product, most often an iPhone. At this stage, it feels like a simple purchase. Just a phone with a smooth interface and a premium feel. But then something interesting happens. The user buys AirPods. Now, listening to music or taking calls becomes effortless. The AirPods connect instantly. No setup, no friction. It just works. That small convenience creates the first layer of attachment. Next, the user gets a MacBook. This is where the experience starts to feel different from other brands. Suddenly, the iPhone and MacBook begin to work together. You can receive calls on your laptop. You can reply to messages without touching your phone. You can copy something on your iPhone and paste it directly on your Mac. It feels seamless. Then comes the Apple Watch. Now notifications move to your wrist. Health tracking becomes automatic. Unlocking your Mac becomes faster. You do not need to type passwords as often. Small conveniences start stacking up. At this point, everything is connected. Now add services into the mix. The user starts storing photos and files in iCloud. Music is streamed through Apple Music. Payments are made using Apple Pay. Apps are downloaded through the App Store without realizing it. Their entire digital life is now inside Apple's ecosystem. Now imagine asking this person to switch to another brand. They would have to move their photos, files, and contacts. They would lose certain features that only work within Apple's system. They would need to learn a new interface. They might even need to replace multiple devices. It is not impossible, but it is inconvenient, and most people choose convenience over change. This is exactly how Apple wins. It does not force customers to stay, it makes leaving uncomfortable. Even at a higher level, this pattern holds true. Many professionals, creators, and business leaders stay within Apple's ecosystem for years. Not because they lack options, but because everything works too smoothly to give up. Apple has turned small conveniences into a powerful system, and that system keeps customers coming back. So what can we actually learn from Apple's business model? The biggest lesson is this. Winning in business is not about selling a product, it is about building a system. Most people think in terms of one-time transactions. You create a product, you sell it, you make money, and then you look for the next customer. This approach works, but it has limits. You are constantly chasing new buyers. Apple does the opposite. It focuses on keeping customers for as long as possible. Instead of asking, how do we sell this product? Apple asks, how do we make this customer stay? And the answer is, by creating an experience that improves over time. Every new product a customer buys does not just add value on its own. It increases the value of everything they already own. An iPhone becomes more useful with a MacBook. A MacBook becomes more powerful with an Apple Watch. Services tie everything together. This is called building an ecosystem. And ecosystems create leverage, because now, you are not selling isolated products. You are selling a connected experience. That becomes harder to replace with every step. Another important lesson is control. Apple controls its hardware, its software, and its distribution. This level of control allows the company to maintain consistency, quality, and a strong brand identity. It does not rely heavily on third parties to deliver the core experience. This is why Apple can charge premium prices. It is not competing to be the cheapest option. It is competing to be the most complete and reliable system. There is also a lesson in simplicity. Apple removes friction wherever possible. Setup is easy. Devices connect instantly. Features work without complicated steps. This simplicity makes the experience feel natural, and when something feels easy, people stick with it. So whether you are building a business, a brand, or even a personal project, think beyond the first interaction. Think long-term. How can you create something that people do not just try once, but continue to use every day? Because real success does not come from a single sale. It comes from building something people rely on. Apple's success is not luck. It is a strategy built on ecosystems, integration, and long-term thinking. Every device, every service, every feature is designed to work together, making life easier for the customer while creating immense value for the company. And once you understand this, you start to see the patterns everywhere. In the largest companies, the smartest investors, and the businesses that quietly dominate entire markets, they all think in systems, not single products. They focus on retention, recurring revenue, and building something customers cannot easily leave. If you want to understand how money actually works, not just how people spend it, but how the smartest players build it, then you are in the right place. Here at The Geeky Investor, we break down complex business strategies into simple, actionable insights you can use. So hit that subscribe button and join us. Because in the next video, we will go even deeper into the genius strategies behind DRE. Behind the world's most successful companies. Learn how they operate, how they think, and how you can apply the same principles to grow wealth and think like the experts.